Let's face it, most sales demos are a complete and total snooze fest. Features overload, empty promises, yawn, boring rubbish. But what if you could ditch the fluff and turn every demo into a sales win? Well, that's what we're going to crack open in this video. I'm going to unveil a killer 6-step framework to show you exactly how to demo your product like a boss and leave your customers begging to buy. So first things first, control the flow. Now imagine your demo as a roadmap to success with your buyer. They need to see where they are going and why that direction matters. And that's why we're going to start with a clear agenda at the top of our call. Because let me ask you this, have you ever walked into a meeting without a plan? Yeah, you've been there, I've done it as well. It's a recipe for disaster. So before the call, send a quick email with a bullet point agenda outlining what you're going to cover. This gives the buyer a heads up and shows that you're organized as well. Then when your demo call starts, take a minute to verbally run through that agenda again. This keeps everyone on the same page and lets you control the flow of how things will run. You might say something like, well, I'm looking forward to running through our demo with you today. I know that you want to look at a specific feature, so I'll run through that first. But these demos are a conversation, so please stop me if something piques your interest and you want to learn more about it. How does that sound? See, this sets the expectation that you as the salesperson are leading the way, but you're also open to questions. And we're going to talk more about handling questions and objections and keeping things on track in the final step of this video with the salesman.com does it make sense to closing process. Remember, the agenda isn't a cage that you're trying to trap your buyer within. It is a compass on this journey, this pathway from taking them from half knowing what you're up to and what you sell to absolutely being bought in and wanting to do business with you. So if something does come up and it's super relevant, be flexible and adjust your plan on the fly. But by the very nature of setting an agenda up front, you take control and you ensure that this demo is going to hit the high notes that you know are going to get your buyers to say yes. Now, hopefully, if you're following the salesman.com process, you can find out more about all the steps of the process in the free book, Seller Made Simple. There's a link in the description below this video. If you've done the process in order, you've done a diagnosis call to really understand what the buyer's needs are. You've played detective in that previous call. You've gathered some clues about the buyer's problems. Now it's time to reconfirm that those issues still exist. So before diving into your product, the features, the benefits, all that stuff, spend 2 minutes or so asking a few targeted questions. For an example, you might ask a question like, do you feel that your current CRM system makes it difficult to manage your customer accounts effectively? Or you might tie into what they said previously in your diagnosis call. You might say, you told me that some of your customer relationships suffer because of missed follow-ups. How would a more automated system, perhaps like what we're going to talk about today, improve your customers' satisfaction? So focus on those specific challenges and then understand what success really looks like for them. The reason for this is that we can then, in real time, tailor our demo to tick all of the boxes that they're telling us that they want. If they tell us that they want a specific outcome and our demo gives them that specific outcome, then it makes absolutely logical sense for them to say, yes, I want to move forward with this. Joey Coleman hinted at something similar to this on a recent Salesman podcast episode.
What I'd encourage folks to do is think outside the context of payment, because payment is interesting to you, but it's a pain point for your customer. What are the things that you could give notices about that have nothing to do with payment, but instead are about, things they're excited about?
That's right. Don't focus on, in this example, the payment system. Focus on what the buyer wants from that payment system. And reconfirming the value that the buyer wants at the top of the call is the best way to go about doing this. In essence, reconfirming the buyer's pain point does two main things. First off, it shows that you care. They see the demo isn't just a generic pitch, but they see it's tailored to their situation, their needs. Doing this will build massive rapport of your prospects. And the second thing is, as I said, it sharpens your message. Knowing their exact needs allows you to target the features, the benefits, the outcomes, the desires that matter most to your prospects, saving you both a load of time. Remember, don't overdo it here. A few well-placed questions, well, that's enough to unlock a treasure trove of information. And of course, by understanding your prospects' buying triggers, you can ditch the features that they don't care about. So there's two sides to this. Do more of what they want, do less of what they don't care about, which dramatically increases the buying temperature of the prospect throughout the entire process because you're a lot more concentrated on the things that really matter to them. We'll talk more about crafting the perfect questions in the next step with our if you agree X, will you do Y strategy. So this is a massive power play. Sales Nation, listen up. You've got the agenda locked in. You've unearthed a few of the prospect buying triggers. Now it's time to really seal the deal. Remember those pain points, hopefully you've just covered as we go through this process? Well, this is where they start to shine. We're going to make a deal with the buyer. We're going to micro-close them. If I solve your problem, will you take some action? That's what we're going to communicate with them. It's pretty simple, right? And you want to communicate this in a clear question. So you might say, so the person's buyer name, you mentioned a specific pain point. If I can show you how our product solves that and helps your team get to a specific outcome, would you be open to making a decision about moving forward with our program by the end of this call? So there's some subtle things going on there, but you see how it works. We are personalizing this question, of course, based on the needs that we've uncovered, that we've confirmed, and then we're asking for a verbal commitment. And here's how I do this very literally with Salesman.com Academy. When I'm doing demo calls with VPs of sales who are looking to bring a team on board, I'll say, okay, so if I run through the training platform and you agree that the step-by-step frameworks and the coaching calls are going to help your team find and close more sales, would you make a decision whether you want to move forward with this or not by the end of this meeting? And there's not a lot of pressure here. I'm saying, does it make sense to do this or not by the end of the call? I'm just trying to incept the buyer that the ball will be in their court when I do my side of the equation here. I'm going to give them a gentle nudge to making that decision. And if they say yes to this, it gives you a clear goal for your end of the bargain here. By the end of the demo, all you've got to do is prove that your solution solves the problem, and then you can ask for the buyer's business, or you can at least ask for that next step. Most of the sales watching this video will not do that step. I've seen it all the time, but it is so effective when you do implement it. Remember, you're a salesperson, you're exchanging value here with a prospect. You shouldn't be sucking up to them. If they're not willing to agree to potentially work with you, if you show them how you can solve their problems, then they're not a prospect, they're not qualified, and they're never going to do business with you. So you need to jump off this call immediately anyway. But you'll find that you'll start asking the question. Most people will go, yeah, that does make sense. Okay, so we've set the stage, we've uncovered the buyer's needs, and we've nudged them into making a decision whether they want to work with us by the end of the demo by asking, if I do this, will you do that? Now it's time to turn this demo into a sales masterpiece. Forget all of the dull just lists of feature after feature after feature. Instead, we're going to dive into what's called the feature benefit desire loop. This is the secret sauce for killer demos. Using this framework instead is going to keep them engaged and hungry for more. And here is the magic formula. You're going to start with the feature. You're going to showcase a feature that you think is going to solve the buyer's biggest pain point. Not all the pain points, the biggest one. Then you're going to move on to the benefits. You're going to explain how this feature helps them solve something specific. Then the desire. We're going to paint a picture of the brighter future that this benefit is going to create. And this is the step that most people leave out. Most people are comfortable with features and benefits. We need to really drill into the desires. What is the future reality that we're trying to move towards, that the feature and the benefit gets us that one step closer or gets us to the end of the game here? And then we're going to confirm. We're going to ask if what we've just communicated actually resonates with them. So imagine this. I'm selling Salesman.com Academy. Here is how this loop might look. For the feature, I might say, this is our proven step-by-step framework for whatever part of the sales process it is. I'll then lead with the benefit. It helps your team build a winning sales cadence and books meetings like clockwork. This is where most sales stop, and this is where we have to go that one step further. Then we lean into the desire. You can then finally ditch the constant nagging from your team and focus on coaching, which is your favorite part of being a VP of sales, right? Hopefully they go, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So then we want to confirm it. Cool. So these frameworks sound like they're going to help you coach more. Does that make sense? So do you see how this works? We're not just listing out features, we're showing the value, and then we're going that one step further and overtly communicating how much they're going to change the person's day-to-day existence in their role, or if we're dealing with an executive, a C-suite executive, for example, we want to explain how this change is going to affect their business and all the benefits that will come to them from that. And by repeating this loop with multiple features, benefits, desires, and then confirmations, over the course of your sales demo, you're going to refine what the buyer actually needs. You're going to learn what really excites them and what kind of falls flat. And this intel should be documented down. You've got a notepad hopefully next to you as you're doing your sales demos, because this is crucial info to craft a powerful closing statement, which is what we're going to cover in the next step. And a quick bonus tip here, if it fits your product, ask the buyer to show you their problem firsthand. Have them share their screen open if you're selling a CRM, for example, and get them to show you how much of a mess it is, how they can't log in, any technical, physical problems that they have with their current provider. If the buyer sees their pain and then you show them visually how you can solve it, you can absolutely fuel their desire to change their solutions. And remember, don't fear getting a no, I'm not that interested as you go through these loops on your sales demo. Of course, we want everything to be the most pain, the most pleasure, the most excitement. But if you run through a feature, benefit, desire, confirmation loop and the buyer's like, yeah, I'm not that arsed, well, you know not to talk about that again. You can refine your value proposition and you can use this to make sure that you're only hitting the high notes later on in the process. And of course, as you're planning out your sales demo, which you should do for each individual person that you engage with, it shouldn't be just one generic demo that you run through. Start with the feature that you think is going to resonate the most, the one that led the buyer to getting on the call with you in the first place. Then branch out from that feature. So it shouldn't be feature 1 and then feature 27. Things that are absolutely not connected. You should start with the thing that people care about and branch off from there. The other features benefits should build the one that is the big needle mover. So you have one real strong reason for the buyer to take action as opposed to 27 middling, kind of not that bothered reasons that the buyer may or may not take action. Which leads on to step 5. So have you ever heard the saying, people mostly remember the beginning and the end of an experience? Well, your sales demos are no different. Think back to a bad movie. You got all the boring middle bits, they probably all blur together, right? Well, we don't want that with our sales demos. And here is the science. Prospects tend to remember the peak moment, which is why we want to find one feature that they absolutely care about and then use the feature, benefit, desire, confirmation loop on that, and then link together other features that raise this one up and make it even stronger, because that builds this peak moment, the emotional high in our conversation. And then people tend to remember the end of engagement as well. This is called the peak end law. It's pretty well studied at this point. So maybe we're unsure what the feature, benefit, desire is that the buyer really wants. Well, to understand what the peak moment is and to double down on it, just watch your buyer's reaction. If they say, wow, or they say, oh, damn, I wish I could do that. These are goldmine reactions. These are the peak moments where the buyer sees the potential of your product to solve their problem. So if you see one of these peak moments, make a note, scribble it down. Later on, you can use this peak moment to remind the buyer of why they should engage with you, why they should book more calls, why they should get the deal over the line. So very practically here, a few things to listen out for. And I hear these all the time when I'm on sales calls with Salesman.com Academy. So the buyer might say, if I signed up, it means I could also. So this shows that the buyer's envisioning a brighter future working with you. They might turn around and say, oh, I didn't realize you could do that, which is a surprise, right? This means that the product that you've communicated with them is already exceeding their expectations. The prospect might say, well, if this could do that, then I would get this other thing. And this signals a shift in the buyer's thinking. They start to see new possibilities. And that's the value that you can add as a salesperson on one of these calls, right? If they just wanted to see a list of features, they'd go on the website, they'd watch a YouTube video about your product. These kind of responses are what we're trying to elicit. Remember, peak moments are all about creating a belief shift in the buyer. You want them to walk away thinking, wow, this could actually help me achieve that or this, or it could change the way that we approach all of these different things. So, with the peak moment identified, we're now on the home stretch. The last step in the demo process is to confidently guide the buyer towards making some kind of decision. You cannot let the buyer leave your call without deciding and committing to something. Because I'm sure you've had this before, right? The buyer goes, thank you for your time, and they leave you with that awkward, unsure feeling of what the heck is going to happen next. They also don't know what's going to happen next either, so they're no better off. Instead, we want our buyers to walk away with clarity and a plan. They've got to communicate with us what the next steps are. And you can do that by transitioning smoothly from the demo phase of the conversation into the closing phase of the conversation with open-ended questions. These nudge the buyer to think about buying without feeling pressured. Instead of being really blunt and saying, well, are you ready to buy today? You can ask questions like, okay, is there anything missing from what I showed you that you think that you need to achieve your goal? And again, we're always redirecting the buyer towards the specific desires, the outcomes, the future reality that they want to move towards that we uncovered in the diagnosis call before the demo call and that we reconfirmed at the top of this call itself. Another question you might ask is, did you discover any features that surprised you by what they can do? Again, here we're trying to frame up a conversation where the buyer shows that, well, we exceeded their expectations when they came into the call. And finally, you might ask, is there anything else that we need to cover before you feel comfortable deciding whether to move forward or not? Now, this empowers the buyer to take ownership of the next step, but we also give them an easy out so they don't feel pressured by the question itself. And by asking a few open-ended questions, you lay the groundwork to transition from the demo into the closing question. And all you're going to ask is, hey, does it make sense to move forward with this? So for a small deal size, it might be, does it make sense to get your credit card out and to move forward and make a purchase right now? For a much larger, complex B2B deal, it might be, does it make sense for Jill, Jackie, and Barry to jump on a call with us Tuesday morning so we can get all of this wrapped up? Whatever the next step of the buying process is, you've got to attempt to close it on the demo. You can't have that ambiguity in your sales pipeline of, well, I've done 25 demos, but I don't know if any of them are actually interested. You've got to close the sale, or at the very minimum, the next step of the process. And that is it. That's the demo process. You've aced the demo with an agenda, you've uncovered the buyer's needs, you've secured an agreement, you've created a peak buying moment, and you've closed them on the next step. And if you want to continue making selling simple, why not click the video that's on the screen right now?